hata kwenye giza totoro, baby, nachitaji ni uwepo wako na ni sawa. When you make me wrong, yo, na kesho peponi, yeah. Sikinishafunga kwa komeo ya usisiki. Wabaya wanasema unifai, wanasema yetu na halina kwenye mpenzi na imani, baby. Wabaya wanasema unifai, wanasema yetu na halina kwenye mpenzi na imani, baby. This kind of love, utoikatata kwa hela of love. This kind of love, utoikatata kwa sponsor of love. Right, so I would like to start this session. So I would like to start this session. So today we are talking about COVID-19 pandemic and conspiracies globally. So everyone who wants to join this session, we have a link on the comment section. You just click it, takes you in, and then we can proceed with this conversation. So we have our resident epidemiologist candidate. So he will be helping us in this conversation as more guests will join. So as we wait them to join, Eric, maybe you can introduce yourself, and then we proceed with this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Patrick. I am Eric Agore from Kenya, but I'm currently based in Germany. I'm doing my master's in international health, specializing in epidemiology and disease control. Yeah, so this is my area of interest, and this is what I'm doing in Germany. First, I came here as an exchange program participant, but then I shifted. Now I'm doing masters in international health. So yeah, so this is what I'm currently doing in Germany.
Interesting. Yes. Great. But first of all, before Eric, maybe we continue, and maybe I don't know, but you have an echo. I don't know why.
An echo?
Yes, from your side.
Yeah, because I'm using the speaker of the laptop. I don't want to put on the headphones. They usually make me feel a little bit crazy, but I don't know. Is it okay?
Let me confirm. Still, it has some echo. So the problem is when there's that echo, it takes time before to be able to understand each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe I try to use my headphones, but I don't like them because.
It's okay. I'm sorry. It's because of trying to maybe get to hear you, and from my side, and also participants to be having some.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Let me try to use the headphones so that I can.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Okay. All right. So
is it okay now?
Yeah, perfect. It's now perfect.
Okay.
Good. Yeah. So maybe Eric, before maybe we even go to this topic of today, I just want to get your comments. There's reports that in Kisii, police actually really assaulted a doctor who was out when there was a curfew. Maybe I want to get your sentiments in this report.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Unfortunately, I've not read something about this because I've been out of the whole day. So I've not read the report about this, and I don't know the situation that led to this doctor being assaulted. So I'm not able, maybe I'm not in a position to comment with all facts at hand. So maybe, yeah, I maybe request to skip this one. Yeah. Yes. So I don't want to comment without the facts. So maybe. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so maybe I want to say maybe that was not a good thing that happened. There was a guy who was actually assaulted because he was way on a curfew hours, So I think police needs now to be more serious when it comes to maybe trying to enforce these curfew hours. But anyway, we can go to this discussion now.
Yeah.
So, Eric, first of all, because we are talking about global conspiracies,
Yeah.
first of all, I want, because there's a lot of issues, maybe in the Western countries and also even Europe, Asia, and even Africa. But
Yeah.
first, I will want to shoot this the way it is. People are saying when it comes to, because the issue even on conspiracies, the issue is on vaccines. Yeah?
Yeah.
Can you tell us, is having a vaccine, and especially the claims to Bill Gates Foundation, that for him to come to Africa, he will have a microchip on everyone, and then it will be like for you to either travel or do anything, you'll have to have some kind of certification. Is this real, or is this even a mark of the beast?
Thank you so much, Patrick. I think so far there are a lot of conspiracies that are going around, and I have to admit that this is one of the conspiracy theories. Yeah, for a very long time, Bill Gates has been known to be concerned about the African population growth, and there are schools of thought that are saying that he will do anything possible to have our population regulated. But as you all know, the ways of administering a vaccine, a chip is not one of them. So having a chip actually is not a way of administering a vaccine. And if they insist that this is a must for everyone, then I think the conspiracies could have a point. But having said this, it is still too early, and we haven't seen anybody coming out in the public to say that the mark must be that you must have this kind of mark, or you must have this kind of documents to travel to the US. So there are a lot of rumors. As I said the other time, it's infodemic. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there. So as at the moment, we can't really say with a lot of surety that this is the intention of Bill Gates. But we just have to wait and see. But of course, we also have professionals out there who are practicing. And ways of administering vaccines, we all know them. And having a microchip is not one of them. So if they insist something like this, then I would go to the sides of the conspiracies and say that then it could be a mark of the beast. I don't know. Yes, yes, yes.
All right. I want to bring in Wekesa. Wekesa, how are you?
I'm good.
All right. So maybe Wekesa, you can do a quick introduction, and then you can weigh in terms of what you saw happening in Kisii.
Of marriage. I'm Wekesa Eric from Masako County. I think that's enough.
Great. You can weigh in terms of the assault to a doctor in Kisii.
Which assault?
There was a doctor who, okay, you have not seen this news. Eh? There's a news of a doctor who was beaten by police. He was caught in curfew hours. So if you haven't, we'll skip that. So we can.
I'm still working. You guys are on leave. You are staying home. Sometimes I flip through. Some things I see, some I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great. And I also have realized that there is an echo on your side there, but I think now it's okay. Is it?
It's okay.
It's okay. Sorted. All right. Good. So, Wekesa, I will still push the same to you in terms of today we are talking about conspiracies surrounding this COVID-19 pandemic and also issues of vaccines. Yeah. You have seen what is happening in terms of Bill Gates Foundation and the claims that are coming in. Is even administering a vaccine and even the issues on microchip being said to be maybe the mark of the beast, something to talk about.
Anyway, I think we are here every day, and let's begin by the good news first. I have seen today in my county. I've seen my governor Mutua has transformed the Kenyatta Stadium into a COVID treatment center. There are different units. Actually, it's about 400 beds. So that means the beds will be able to cater for quite a number of patients. And he has said he has done that to separate the sick patient, the COVID patients from the normal patients, so that there could not be cross infection. For me, that was a plus. And then he talked about they have 10 ventilators and they are working on 10 more, which is a good strategy that we need all our other governors to come up with in terms of the fight against the disease. Okay, let me now go to your question on conspiracies. Conspiracies are many. They started from Wuhan. The first thing we heard was that Wuhan manufactured the virus in the laboratory. So that was one problem with conspiracies is in logic they say if you come up with a good argument, your premises must support your conclusion. The facts you present your conclusion must be based on the facts you have presented.
Yeah.
Most of the conspiracies, if you want to know if they are conspiracies, people will want to jump into a conclusion, but they don't want to feed you with enough facts so that you can be confidently say that this thing actually came from the lab. And so if that be true, then the scientists from Wuhan were liars, because they had gone through it and said this was a strain, and they compare it with a strain that was there in 2003, the SARS, and there's another strain that was there of the virus that was there in 2013.
Okay.
And so I don't think we need to hear the conspiracies. They remove us out of our own cocoon of thinking, but we should not jump into a conclusion until the facts supplied are satisfactory. The next conspiracy we had was that this was a vaccine actually that was patented 2015. When you look at some of the clips when Bill Gates was talking in 2015 back there, talked about there will come a disease that will have of this magnitude. And so my brother's mic is okay. I'm hearing some echoes.
Okay. I think so. It's okay now.
Yeah. So they say that that was a vaccine that was patented and it needs to be used. I don't know where people get this notion that the idea of I know Bill Gates is a businessman, and for me, apart from the whole globe consumes his products, and in business, numbers, just as in politics, numbers. The more the numbers, the better the business. So I have no idea how reducing population will increase his business portfolio. I don't know his agenda, because most of those who are fronting that conspiracy, if you ask them clearly what is the agenda, they won't tell you.
Okay.
I think if somebody told me that Palestine wants to wipe out Israel from the face of the earth, I can easily understand, because there is a fight. They are fighting over Jerusalem. but I don't relate the reduction of population with Bill Gates. It doesn't make sense. That's why I can tell you for free, he has not even responded to that because it's too junior for him.
Okay.
It's something that it doesn't even merit his response.
Okay.
The third conspiracy was about the Melinda Foundation. They are the ones funding this coronavirus thing. And again, the facts are still wanting to merit the conclusion. And then the last thing I want to talk about, the conspiracy that we have been having. I think we talked about the figures of Wuhan. No? The figures of Wuhan, they say that people died in millions, and they are lying to us that just people have died in a few thousands. Again, okay, there might, in terms of figures, most governments may not be telling us the real figures. But for us to go to an extent of talking about millions, we should have some background of what's happening. We still have Kenyans in China. We still have. There's no way you can hide this thing. It should be circulating in social media. So they
Okay.
might be hiding the figures, but not exactly in millions.
Okay, good, good. I want to go to Eric, and then I'll bring in Alphonse. Eric, you hear what Wekese is talking, and especially from a public health perspective, and also in terms of maybe coming up with drugs, vaccines. What Wekesa is saying, is it something holding water?
Yeah, because if sometimes, the conspiracies that are usually peddled around is that Bill Gates is trying to reduce the numbers, but this is a business guy. So what I'm not really connecting is the relationship between his business and reducing the numbers, because for one thing, we know that the higher the numbers, the better the business. Okay, but also there are also people who argue that Africans their numbers are increasing disproportionately as opposed to the available resources, and then they end up immigrating to the other countries. So this is the point of concern. And this is what other people are trying to raise, that the people of Bill Gates and the other wealthy Americans are trying to regulate this so that not everybody can encroach into the developed countries, so that they can have a regulated number. Yeah, but having said this, just like I said before, the process of administering a vaccine is very clear, and having a chip is not one of them. So we are still waiting to see, because currently, as we speak, there's no country that has found a vaccine. No country has found a vaccine. So they're all still on the different phases of trials. So we are waiting to see until the final product comes, and then they will tell us how do they want to get it administered. Then, if the process of administering vaccine in the US becomes different as it is to Africa, then we can raise some concerns about this. Why is it different? Yeah, then just like I also said, there was also some reports. Everything is now like a conspiracy. That some people are, that there's also a vaccine that is already being tested in Africans. Yeah, for me, I think this is not so acceptable, and there's no vaccine yet, because the process of developing a vaccine takes a long time. But because we have got improved technology, and because this is now an urgent issue, some of the processes can be fastened, and some of the regulatory procedures can also be overlooked, so that we can save the dying world. Yeah, so if it's also already being done in some parts of Africa, then this is basically trials, and it is not a vaccine. It is basically trials. There's no vaccine that has been found yet. Yeah.
Good, good. That's
Can I
good.
weigh in on vaccine just a little bit?
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
In terms of a vaccine, for me, I also don't see the reason why people and most of the people who are yelling so much about the vaccine and medics. I ask myself, we haven't seen even the vaccine. but there are people who have already known the vaccine and even what it's going to do. You ask them exactly, okay, even if somebody like Bill Gates the only thing he can do is he can only sponsor a vaccine because he's not a medic. And the people who can do are people who practice medicine. And when a vaccine comes, I don't think it will be administered the way people think, because every drug goes through a process, as our friend has said. And there is what we call, you have to understand the pharmacokinetics and dynamics of a drug. You need to understand the efficacy and the potency of a drug. So we will still need the prowess and the input of our medics to ascertain whether this drug is effective for human use. It's not like you are bringing relief food and just giving out. That's not how drugs are administered. Yeah.
Okay, good. I want to bring Alphonse. Alphonse, you can maybe quickly introduce yourself, and then I want you to weigh in terms of the case of a doctor who was beaten in Kisii. What you think, your thoughts in that, and also now we can go to the discussion.
I have been a bit engaged, so I didn't have the full information about the Kisii doctor case.
Okay.
So I may want not to comment on that because it's good to comment with some information.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So my name is Alphonse Were, labor policy consultant in Nairobi here.
Great. So seems everyone have not checked this news. All right, that's good. That's
what I was doing, I was actually checking on I was more focusing on the global issues, particularly outside the continent, to just see what is happening out there. So I think I might have missed it. I'm very sure it's not something that happened was not reported long ago.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Because up to 4, I was still having a lot of touch with the local news, but after that, I missed it.
Sure, that's good. That's fine. All right. So, Alphonse, I want you to weigh in terms of you saw Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Maybe now there's allegations that it will be investigated in terms of their roles in the vaccine and even what the health organization funding. What's your thoughts in this?
I've seen Bill today. Bill Gates himself being interviewed by BBC this evening actually. Part of his reasons and why he is being becoming a person of interest in this matter is that the Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation has really been at the center of funding of very many related to vaccination related projects. And he has heavily invested in the health projects. But also his TED Talk of 2015, which talked about a possible pandemic. So I think with those two as part of the background, I think that's why Bill Gates is becoming one of the interest people in the whole of this story. Having listened to him now, I think around 5 times in the last 10 days, from various fora. Number one, I would like to say that yes, though he is not a medic, but his involvement in funding projects in the medical field must have given him an upper hand to have some more medical information than an average medic. Yeah, because he does this globally at a higher scale, countrywide, continent-wide, and sometimes just projects that in anticipation. There are a few issues that are questionable. One of them is why his own former personal doctor allegedly has said that Bill refused that his children cannot be vaccinated. Yet the same vaccines, he's the one who has funded them to be developed. So that has raised a lot of questions around that space. But Bill is a business person, and I was listening to Agur Erica talking, in his reasoning in presentation that he was presenting was that being a business person, he expects that the business people will expect more people to be involved in terms of they expect the bigger the population, the bigger the market for their products. But there are different types of products. There are products that sell higher when you have a smaller population demanding for them. They are they are called goods or articles of ostentation, yeah, or Vemblen goods. Those things that demand increases when supply goes down. Not necessarily, but I don't know how to explain this. There are some specific things in life that don't follow the natural law of demand and supply. So, and one of them, if you look at the medical facilities, the fewer you have high value medical solutions, the higher the value of those medical solutions. And therefore you attach a premium. And business models like those ones of Bill, they target government, they target continent, they target president. So the negotiation is usually at that level. So when you have that level negotiation where you want to fund the country, but also give chance for your products to enter the country. So sometimes the demand and supply law may not be applied, but this is at this level, we can just say it's a speculation. There are no facts based on it. But what are some of the key things we need to look into? I'm sure by now all of us have heard about Berlin having billed Beijing $130 billion for the damages caused as of now by the COVID-19 havoc wreaked in Germany. And already Beijing is up in arms. But if you look at the data centrally being gathered about COVID-19 statistics globally, you find that one, China has a lot possibly that is hiding, because as the rest of the countries, we can tell how many tests they have made. We can't tell how many tests have been made by China. Yeah, the data about China, how many tests they have made, how many people are tested in China, that data is blank. The rest of the countries have some information, including in Kenya now, we have been told it's around 13,000 tests done. Now, out of these people done, tests done, how many people actually died? Again, the data in China is questionable, because when you look at, most people die from the critical cases. Now, recently, the number of people who were reportedly dead, I think is like 4 or 5 days ago in China, yeah, were more, and then the explanation was not making sense to me, at least. They're saying that they had not gathered some information so that now is making us have more dots that require to be joined. So it is, and then I think also I've come across a situation where we have a Harvard University professor of virology, who also seems to have been on a payroll for a long time to develop a specific genetic makeup of a virus, and it's assumed that it's actually it's assumed that it's actually this virus that we are talking about, COVID-19, and he's under investigation in the US as we speak. He's actually arrested and under investigation. So with such information coming in pockets, then three things. One, it's a possible this is a trade war between the giants in trade spectrum, and China and its allies, US and its allies are likely to be at the center. The rest of us might just be a situation whereby when the two big brothers are fighting, the small ones also have to suffer the most, but didn't have anything to do with the fight. So that's one. Two, it's possible that this was a lab process that went sour, and without necessarily having been planned for that, because we can have production of viruses actually in the lab. So it's possible that that production was not meant to come out, but accidentally it did. That's a second possibility. And the third possibility that it was just an intention that we want to have war, and using virus will be a better way to deal with the world.
Okay, that's interesting take. Now I want to bring in Conrad, and then we go to Eric, and then we go to Akesa. Conrad, you can have a quick introduction about yourself, and then you can weigh in terms of the conspiracies when it comes to Bill Gates Foundation. Conrad? Right, Conrad, you can unmute your mic. Conrad? All right, seems Conrad Mike is not unmuted yet. So I'll go to you, Eric, to respond to Alphonse.
Maybe just to seek a clarification, there's a point he was raising about Berlin building Beijing. Maybe to clarify, he could clarify on this, then we can maybe I can proceed. Just I didn't get this so well. Yeah. So
right.
yeah.
Billing, not building.
Alphonse, can you respond? Can you clarify on your?
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was saying. Germany has calculated the damage caused by the COVID-19 pandemic in Germany by end of last week. And on Friday, I think it was Friday, Germany sent an invoice to Beijing, China, saying that since you are the cause of this, you need to pay us. Now, this is now in public domain. It's no longer a story. It's now in public domain. Now, in response, Beijing has been very furious with that action. But that is just the start of what I'm anticipating to happen with other countries like US and UK, Italy, Spain, that they are all going to hold China accountable, and they will want economic action to be taken against China, and in this case, most likely economic compensation, which they will compile. But for Germany, they have already done that as of end of last week, and they have sent the invoice to Beijing, $130 billion.
All right, Eric.
Wow, that's quite interesting. Thank you so much for. Yeah, I had something like this, but then I didn't read so much about it. Yeah, that Germany was claiming some kind of compensation from China. But thank you for that clarification. Yeah. So having this in mind, yeah, we already talked about the conspiracy. So what I would like to say next, Patrick, if you may allow me, is we've had in the past, like I said, that viruses can be developed in a lab. So just like Alphonse also said, maybe this was a procedure gone wrong. They didn't expect this to happen. Yeah, that's one of the way that we can look at it, that they didn't expect this, then it went wrong beyond the expectation. Then another thing, maybe it was intentional. You know, China is trying to prove a point. As you all know, America has been riding on its, especially America has been the superpower. But what they have been riding on has been on their military prowess and then their arsenal and everything. But then China is coming with a different way. That is their economic power. And as you all know, almost all countries have been leasing some of their production processes in China. Actually, most of the European countries produce most of the things from China, basically because of cheap labor and maybe cheap production process. And this is one of the advantages that China had. This one was one of the incentives that China gave to most of the countries. And then most of the countries focused and threw that production to China. But then, as of today, most of the countries were withdrawing some of these benefits that they give to China because of what China has done. So yeah, I think it could escalate further to a war more than what we have at hand, because some people are also thinking that China is trying to prove a point now that they have gained some kind of foothold in also becoming a superpower on their own. Because as we talk now, look at what China is doing in Africa. They already have a strong foothold in Africa, more than any other European country. Europe is only strong when they're united. But if you look at a single European nation, none has a strong foothold in Africa more than China. So they are also feeling like China is trying to overthrow their superiority in a way. But even if you look at each European country, none can be as strong as China now. So I think China has been for a very long time been strategizing, and then they feel that it's now the right time to come up and maybe prove a point.
Okay.
But now, so I don't know whether I still have time, but maybe some interjection is welcome. Yeah.
Sure, proceed. Just proceed.
Yeah. So going back to this issue of the COVID-19, yeah, China has not been very truthful with the data. considering the last global pandemic, which was about the SARS and the MERS, the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, and also the Ebola. Most of the countries, and actually WHO took a lead process in this, in ensuring that every country had got a data reporting system. And if you look at this, there's a real-time reporting mechanism in almost all countries. Look at even South Sudan. Whenever any test has been done and then somebody tests positive, it's reported. And then even if you look at the sites of John Hopkins and all the other international reporting organizations, they capture this. So China, for a very long time, they had this disease. Some people were dying, and then they were lying about their numbers. So this is why WHO and also the America and also other European countries are trying to hold China accountable, because it was already ravaging their nation. People were dying, and then they were lying about their numbers. And then they failed to comply with the IHR. In public health, you have something called International Health Regulation, whereby every country is supposed to comply, especially when it comes to public health disasters and something like this. So China lied about this, and they failed to comply with the IHR.
Okay, good. So maybe before we continue, I want to say Conrad is struggling to sort his network issues. So Conrad, please come back. All right. So Wekesa, I want to go to Wekesa. Wekesa, are you
Yes,
there,
yes.
Wekesa? All right.
Yes.
So Wekesa, we have reports from this doctor in the US who is an immunologist, Dr. Colbert. So Dr. Colbert has been tweeting about COVID-19 and a way of genocide for blacks in the US. She's actually the top black doctor in that whole national committee. But now she's being investigated. Now, if we are getting information from such kind of high rank doctor who is involved in this, what does it say?
Yeah, most of the time, and what is happening to the world is like what the Bible predicted, that in the last days, because of the love of money, the wickedness will increase. And because of the love of the world, the love of God will decrease. And so right now, people are using what they know to gain advantage of other people. And most of government right now are built with their interests in mind, and everything they are doing is to see how they can outstage and outsmart another government so that they can have a foothold. And do you see where most of the time they will use people who have the knowledge. And when you think about the biological weapon has been tried even back in the days of the Second World War. And so I know people are in the lab as much as they are producing arsenals to be the superpowers, but there are those who are looking an alternative, like biological weapon can be the best way to conquer the world, because most of the time people don't suspect, and by the time they are aware of what is happening, they will be already in the middle of the war. And so I think there's that speculation that China took the best professors from Harvard University and then paid them so that they can come up with a lab manufactured a biological weapon to destabilize the world, and then maybe they are up to forming new alliances and bringing down the superpowers so that maybe they can align themselves with. There's a speculation that China and Japan and Russia are up to something. They want to make one economic bloc against the US. If you look at the first tweets of US and of Trump, when this thing was coming up, he was very confident of President Xi. In fact, he tweeted he has been in communication with him. He has seen the interventions they have done against the disease, and he's very confident. As US, were very confident. But I think with the time he realized it, there's more that what meets the eye, and that's why he has retreated, and he's pulling. He is pushing from a different perspective. And that's why he has pushed the WHO away, because if he thinks that WHO may have known the conspiracy that China have, but they didn't do anything about it, and that's why he has a problem with WHO.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So maybe I want maybe to mention about maybe Japan. Probably Japan is not an alliance with China. Most is actually not, because Japan also is withdrawing some of its companies, or even giving them some incentives to shift their business from China to Japan. So maybe you didn't meant to mention Japan, is it?
Anyway, okay, part of these things part of the information we read are just conspiracy. They are not proven theories. I've seen them somewhere, but they are not yet verified.
Sure.
So they just remain theories.
Okay, good.
But maybe I'm looking at this now after US withdrawing the support for WHO of 400 was it millions, and then is it Saudi Arabia compensates it with I think the donations which range up to $500 million. So that means there is something that is going on that we are not very sure, but the realignment may be happening.
Okay, good.
They are still testing the waters slowly.
Okay, good. So, Alphonse, maybe I want you to confirm Japan is not an alliance of China, first of all. Then number two, you can weigh in terms of Dr. Colbert's claim about the genocide in the blacks in the US.
Japan and China are not trade alliance partners in terms of coalition members or coalition partners. So they have their own struggles, and especially the fact that China supports North Korea, and North Korea is a threat to both the US and Japan. And when it comes to development of nuclear weapons, and that is the main issue around that. But they're not close allies. They don't read from the same page, except where they have to safeguard their similar interests, which are a threat at that point. Yeah. What else do you want me to talk about?
Dr. Colbert, who is an immunologist in the US.
Yes.
She's actually claimed that there is a genocide against blacks in the US because of how they are not being attended when it comes to ventilators.
Okay. Maybe the term genocide is what some people are fighting against. But her point is that there is discrimination against the blacks in the US when it comes to being given attention in relation to COVID-19 status. Yeah, so because the health system is generally overstretched, whether it is in the US or elsewhere in the world, so the US system now is giving preferential treatment to the whites as opposed to the blacks. And that's what he's raising seriously. Now, Trump is in power not because of anything major, but because of what we call white supremacy. That's why even in the actual popular vote, he got less votes, counted votes, compared to his competitor. But because of the electoral college and system of voting and in the US, that's how he got into power. So if you are to have physical headcount, there are many people who don't support Trump compared to his opponents. But when it comes to the electoral system, then Trump had a chance because he was voted in by major blocks that have bigger electoral votes. So Trump will not be at peace with anybody who want to advocate for against white supremacy, which is what brought him to power, which is what he is talking about. He is the agent of it, and it's something that the world does not like. So the people who support him don't talk about it, but they just wait and do the action. So those who talk about it, then they are set aside in his administration. And I think that's why Dr. Colbert is now having an issue, or they're having an issue with Dr. Colbert at the moment as an administration. But what she's saying is factual. There is some element from what we have seen reported and the people we have talked to in terms of preferential treatment is given to the whites as compared to their black counterparts who are also Americans.
Okay, good. Conrad, can you unmute your mic? Good. So maybe before we go to Conrad, I want to say we have friends in the US who are very good friends and support Trump, but that's your support. For us, maybe this conversation is more about the discussion and how we see it. So Conrad, so you can introduce yourself quickly and then weigh in terms of vaccines and when it comes to the claims to Bill Gates Foundation. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Conrad Sanya from Busia, and the question about vaccine and Bill Gates and I always find those kind of things a bit laughable. Not because generally, when you try to analyze this thing, you should go back and see why are these people talking like this. Most of the people against vaccine, generally in the most European, in the US and the other some select European country, people are against vaccine. They are mainly called anti-vaxxers. They don't, because probably they have said it is linked to autism. In fact, during the campaign when Trump was campaigning, one of the issues was he made some claim like vaccination is linked to autism or something like that. So it is something that some people in those countries, some elements of people in those countries, they are against vaccine. So anything that will see any development that out there that is seeking to bring out any vaccine, it will always meet some resistance, because they always say like, okay, these people have a hidden agenda. They want this, they want that. So I always find the reason they bring about those issues, they are not concrete reason we can actually say and say this reason is plausible, but it's always to advance the agenda, the anti-vaxxers agenda. That is what. So it is part of the many conspiracy theories around the issue of coronavirus. So many of them, they are out there, and if you look keenly, none of them make sense, because even if what Bill Gates was just trying to do, because I've read and what he was just trying to do, even he's not involved in the development itself, but he decided to put up, I think, 8 or so factories just to be ready whenever those vaccine, whoever will have made those vaccine, the production can start immediately. So I'm not sure if he's involved in any other thing other than that. That is the only part I've heard about his involvement, because we have other companies that are working on the vaccine, like even what is it called, their version, I'm not sure, is it FEM or CDC or wherever, one of them is working on a vaccine. Then you have like Moderna or something like that is working on a vaccine. So many other companies are working on a vaccine, but I'm not sure if Biggest has a share in those. I'm not privy. But all I've read and what is in the public that we know is that he has set up funds to put up factories to mass produce vaccine whenever those vaccine will be ready.
Okay,
That's what
good.
that.
Okay, good take. Eric, are you there? Okay, Eric.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, Eric, Conrad is saying that there will be a mass production of vaccines, and even there is some companies which have even done some trials on animals, like monkeys, and even some human trials, which are giving some very good results in terms of the effect. Now, the question is, will you even take this vaccine, and even how can Africans will be able to be convinced to take these vaccines, and when we have all these conspiracies running?
Yeah, thank you so much, Patrick. But then, mass production of vaccine cannot just happen because there is also the cost involved, and people must come and sit and see how is it going to be financed and who is responsible for what. Yeah, so as we said, the process of also producing a vaccine is quite long, and so far I know it has been. Some countries are at the animal process; they're testing in animal. Some countries I have fastened this process, and they're now doing a small test on humans. But of course, even having this, it's first of all done on small number of human beings to see the effects. Then it can be done on a larger number so that they can see the effect on a larger population. Okay, so having said this, I really don't think mass production of vaccine can start anytime soon because there are also the cost implications and who is going to finance this. Like you also know some of the poor African countries, and having a vaccine is not maybe a priority, it's not a priority for them. Then you can't have a mass production and supply to them because of the costs involved. Yeah, then Patrick, one thing I also wanted to talk about was somebody, I think it was Wekesa, who was saying that the number of the blacks are being targeted in this, especially if you look at the trends in the America. Yeah, it's not about just about this corona thing that is trying to target. It's not it's not actually targeting the blacks, but it's only exposing the reality in the society. If you look at the American system, America is one of the developed countries, is the developed countries with which has the highest number of people who are uninsured, people without insurance schemes. If you look at a country like Germany, where I am, everybody, you must have an insurance in this country. But in the US, so many people are not having insurance, and they happen to be blacks. And if you look at the trends of the COVID-19, most people die as a result of other infections, as a result of having the long-term illnesses. And because of the number of blacks who happen to not have the insurance schemes, they don't have better healthcare services. And so they tend to have higher number of, most of them tend to have these infections. And so when an epidemic like COVID-19 comes, they tend to be more vulnerable as compared to the other whites. But also having said this, we can also rule out the fact that preferential treatments are also usually given, especially to the whites, because obviously this is their country. And when something like this comes, the people of the nation are usually put first, then the immigrants. But then we also have to note that the insurance, having an insurance or not, also determines your accessing your power or the ability to access health services. So I really don't buy the whole idea that saying that blacks are being wiped out. No, we also have to be. We also have to look. We also have to be alive to the reality on the ground. Most of the black people in the America, they don't have the health insurance, and so they end up having higher infections of these long-term illnesses, and then their chances of getting infected or being severely ill as a result of this illness is higher as compared to the whites. So this is one of the factors that is increasing or explaining the higher rates of death among the blacks in the US.
Great.
Yes.
This was actually Alphonse's. So Alphonse will have a right of reply. So Alphonse, when you reply, I will also want you to talk about the statistics in the African context, especially when it comes to some countries in maybe in East Africa, like Kenya might be having a high number. Even what it looks like is the poorer you are, the lower the cases you will have. So does this mean like this is a disease that affects rich countries in Africa? Alphonse.
One of the most problem in the society in the US is racism, even without this condition. And what that means is that it is blacks versus white. Now, I don't think that the blacks they have less ownership of the country, and the whites have a more entitlement to be U.S. citizens. Once you're a citizen, you're a citizen, and most of the blacks were born, their grandparents were born there. So there's no way they can start saying that they are immigrants. No, you can't be an immigrant 200 years later, when even up to 7th generation, they were born there. So the issue is this discrimination. It is very clear, and it's something I refer to as white supremacy, so that the white is regarded as superior to the black, regardless. So that is not just with COVID-19, but any other aspect, even education, where you stay, if you are doing the same job, how much you earn, yeah. So if you have the same mistake, how are you handled by the police? So it is discrimination, and it is just part of it that now that their healthcare system is overstretched, where they can only serve 5 people and 13 people come, they will start by serving 5 white people first, and that is what the issue is. So that the remaining majority of the remaining will be blacks. There might be some whites, yes, but majority will be blacks, and as a result, therefore, more blacks will have an effect. As a matter of fact, blacks are fewer in number in the cases reported, but in proportion, they are the highest in the cases reported. So if you look at, so it's the issue of proportionality, but the absolute numbers, I think the whites are still more. But in terms of proportional numbers, the blacks are now the more. I think the blacks are forming around 29% of the population, and then forms 34% of the positive cases that are not attended to very well as well. So I think that's where we are coming from. There's something I wanted to mention before even you give me the issue of the next question, which I'll ask you to repeat. The issue of there's something we call global governance system. Now, for you to be in charge of the world, you must have a system that works for you. Now, US, which established several systems after the Second World War, the system is entrenched around economic system, which is was established in 1953. Now, that system, part of it was to look at how will we govern the world, and that's why you see that, for example, if you love football, football is governed by FIFA. Now, to be specific, FIFA is never led top-notch by a black, regardless of where they come from, up to now since the establishment. Yeah, the same you'll find with IMF when you're going to World Bank and IMF in terms of financial institutions. Yeah, the same with UN Security Council, which is the greatest of all the organs that govern the world. That Africa has no permanent seat. Yeah, in the UN Security Council, which makes final decisions when things must be closed and sorted, however severe they are. Now, those systems that we call global governance systems are part of that is WHO in the health sector. Now, health sector is not just a WHO issue, but also we came up with the issue of philanthropy. So the origin of philanthropy also was connected to. I'm talking of philanthropy in terms of people providing resources to support so-called poor or needy countries or societies. Now, it is just because they need to have some control over those people, so that those people or those countries remain their subject. So even if a philanthropist or a foundation like Melinda and Gates Foundation was to be engaged, they will give the money, but it's not that they're giving the money because they have a lot of money and they love those people. They have conditions that must be met before they can support that project. They have interests that must be agreed upon to be addressed before they can support. So when we are discussing the issue of Gates Foundation in this matter, what is the greatest interest of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in the field of medicine? I think if we don't understand that, then the rest of it will just be having stories up and down. But once we know why they have invested heavily, they are the heaviest investor among the private investors in the health sector globally. So what is their interest? And why specifically are they more interested in vaccines development, control, distribution of vaccines than any other institution. Then from that perspective of global governance systems and how private players come on board and how foundations interest or whose interest the foundations represent, because if you don't meet those, if you don't represent those interests, however good your idea is, it won't go far. It won't even start off. So I think, to me, that's one thing we need to really jog our mind to research around for those of us who have not done it. But for me, we spent a good time in, when we were doing some studies and some research some time back when I was studying labor sociology. So there's a lot that I was exposed to before even SARS, MERS, Ebola of 2014 to 2016 here, and even now this COVID-19. So there are things that I'm just looking at. This one looked like it has more of these characteristics. That's why when I speak sometimes, and some of them also we have real-time data, yeah, so that we are looking at. And I think even it is in this show in this platform that I was saying there are two areas of target. One was medical or health, the other one was education. I think it is on this platform that I raised such thing that those two are going to experience the worst fight and issues and problems globally because they are targeted areas for creating wealth. Now, as I talked of 1953, there's one area that was to be used to create wealth then, that was finance sector. So there was what they called financialization. Now, in 1980, China left the whole process. So they didn't want to be colonized in the process of financialization, and they didn't want to participate. So they closed their borders. So if for you to work with them, you only had to work with them on their terms. And the advantage was that they had the population, which was the market. Then they manage the infrastructure. And if you want to work with them, the first condition is you must go to China, establish your factory in China. They will give you everything cheap. But it must be done in China. So all global organizations that are multinationals, MNCs, multinational corporations, they started having their main production centers in China because of cost of labor, easy way to start the business, and easy way to run your business from China. But now with globalization. Now what China was doing is it established itself so much with industrialization around that, but it was not giving too much outside. So for 30 years, China closed its borders. So when you're using Google, Google is not in China. Yeah, when you're using Facebook, it is not in China because they refused this infiltration. Instead, they were studying what can we do to do the same. Yeah, so I think there's a lot more. And to me, to be very honest with you, this is going down to trade and military capabilities and war.
Okay. There's one question maybe you have not mentioned about when it comes to countries in East Africa or even Africa. It seems this is going to, it's touching more those countries with high economic value than those who are poor. So is this looking to be a kind of disease for rich countries, as well as, of course, even non-communicable diseases started that way, but later on, it covered almost everyone, even poor countries like us.
Okay, I think the biggest problem with what we are referring to as global south or poor countries or developing economies is ability to test. Kenya has only tested 13,000. So if everybody who was tested was positive, they'll only be having 13,000 positive cases.
Yeah.
Now, US, by yesterday, I haven't checked now, but by yesterday, they tested 3.6 million. Yeah. Now, they're able to detect somebody is dead out of COVID, because out of that, you see, their number was over 700,000 of positive cases. That number is almost bigger than the entire Africa combined in terms of what they have tested. Now, with such direction, then the developing countries and East Africa specifically is we are not testing. So we can't say that we don't have the cases. We are not testing. Tanzania is even fearing to test, yeah, because as we speak now, they are. I think they should be the second after Kenya, yeah, with over 250. And you see, if they were to test every day, and I'm sure by the end of this week they'll be leading the East African Brigade with less tests but more cases. So it is not about the rich man disease. It's a disease for everybody, but the rich man is able to be tested. So the rich countries will make some tangible progress because they will be able to isolate real cases from from those who are not affected. But for us, we are all indoors, but you don't know that you are sick or not sick. Yeah, like now, I want to give a very classic example that is a bit annoying. If it is true, I haven't confirmed many things, but the things I'm seeing, chances are very high that the government has lied. The Homa Bay issue, yeah, in Kenya, where they said they reported somebody was positive. The person allegedly is being said not to be positive. He has not been tested. He's quarantined. I've seen even a video alleging to be that person. I don't know the person, so I don't know whether the government story is the right one or. But when I saw one of the media houses, NTV specifically, when they went to ask this, they reported that they got the people. They asked them, the people were not tested, and therefore, and they're not sick, but they are quarantined. But then they had that funeral. But when the same NTV was now going to the governor, then the governor was found not to be in Homa Bay, is in Nairobi, and said, "Me, I've not talked to the CS about those people, and I don't want to comment on that case." So such situation, you can tell if that level of credibility you have been giving government, if they are the only ones you are relying upon, and then such things turn out to be a lie. You see, they will be playing with the lives of the entire citizenry, which is not a good thing. So I think the East African countries, Uganda has done a good job. That one, I must also congratulate them. I think the process in which Museveni has handled that is totally different from the rest, maybe followed by Kagame, but Uganda has done, I think, the most commendable job here. But without testing, then the rest is only hoping against hope.
Okay, good. All right. So that's
Patrick.
Yes.
Yeah, just to throw in a little comment with regards to what Alphonse was saying. I tend to agree with you when you say that this is a rich man's disease. Because if you look at the history of COVID-19, it started in Wuhan and then how it spread. So the richer the country, the higher the number of international travels and the higher the rates of international guests or people mixing up here and there, which is not the case in poorer countries. Look at a country like South Sudan. There are very few cases. And if any, then it must have been transmitted either from Kenya or something like this. But because this disease particularly, I agree with your question, which was saying that it was a disease for the rich. Yeah, so yeah, as at the moment where we are now, it has now become local, and every country has its own cases. And so it depends on how much are you testing. I tend to agree with Alphonse when it comes to this because maybe everybody outside there is sick, but how many of us have been tested? Nobody. They've only tested 13,000. So we can't say that we are well managing or we are doing well in terms of this disease. Yeah, but in conclusion, I also agree with what Uganda has done. But I think Tanzania is going to be worstly affected because even up to yesterday, they were still the churches were still, people were still gathering in churches, markets, and things like this. And this is a very bad scenario for infectious disease like this one. So if Tanzania can go out in testing its citizens, it can have the highest number of cases in East Africa, which I tend to agree with what Alphonse was saying. Yes, so this is what I just wanted to put across in a brief. Yeah.
Good. So we come to Conrad Wekesa, and then we go to Eric. But Conrad, I want you to do a quick mention about the cases, what's happening in the US. And also now we have touched our live wire when it comes to talking about US and managing the cases. We even have a comment from Crack Morgan, who is saying this is a Chinese virus, that it was actually developed is in the US to make the economy collapse so that Trump can lose the election. Conrad, can you go?
Okay, I'll just mention the bit about the US when you are talking about why are the blacks dying compared to the whites, who are the majority, who are the majority in the cases that have been reported. But when you look across this thing, it's not just about blacks. You go to one other group that is being affected so much is the Hispanics. They're also dying in very huge numbers, the same way like blacks. So the issue here, there are already studies that have been there that people with underlying medical condition are more likely to succumb to this disease than any other person. And I managed just to look at one research. I just looked at it it was from CDC a while back. It was talking about the distribution of those chronic illnesses within the US, and it was talking about cardiovascular diseases, obesity, and the rest of the things. And from that research, it found that blacks and Hispanics, they are more likely to have these conditions than the white counterparts, because mostly
Exactly.
of the socioeconomics. So the
Yeah.
socioeconomic, because here the difference between us and them is that on this Kenyan side, like the poor will tend to eat more healthy food than the rest, but on the other side, the poor people will have to settle on junk food. So it is something
Exactly.
it's something to do with that, and they looked at it through like college degrees. How many people with college? They found that obesity is more with people with no college degrees than people with college degrees, and we know which demographic has less college degrees. So when you look at that, and there are so many other reasons that you can look and see which areas are being affected. But if you look at New York is reporting cases in the metro, so many people working in the metro in the US are dying. And who are these people working there? They are mostly blacks and Hispanics. And this thing is replicated. So you find out that most these people who are dying, most of them, one of the reasons that is being advocated is that some of them are part of the essential services. So they are being hit hard. And who are these people who are disproportionately part of these essential services? Blacks and Hispanics. So if racism is at play, it's very minute, because you have also things like health insurance that Eric had alluded to. So racism on that issue, very very minute. You can't attribute it to racism. So coming to the issue, I think what was the other question
The other question
before?
was the conspiracy on this was a Chinese. This Chinese virus was to make the economies in the US to collapse so that Trump can
Mhm.
lose election.
I found it. You always look at the common logic from all these things. You look at there are so many theories of how this virus came about. There is one which can be true. It came from a lab in Wuhan, which the scientists mishandled they mishandled the virus while they were looking at it. Then it spread. Could be possible. It's not the first virus that has come out from a lab and from China the same way. That is not. It won't be the first case. But I think it is not that they did it deliberately. They It was just an accidental thing that happened. That is according to me. It happened accidentally. But once they started looking at this issue, then they saw we can have a mileage on this issue. So what they are doing currently, they are just trying to get as much mileage out of this issue as possible, because one of the things they have underreported their cases. That is very true. They have underreported the mortality. You can say, oh, it was a new virus, they didn't know people are dying, they couldn't, because even recently I saw the figures. They have updated, I think, their figures to cater for something. They increased the number of deaths attributed to COVID. So you can there's a lot so they are just playing games. They are just trying to play as if they are superior, just getting necessary mileage out of this issue, but it's not something that they plan. It is how they are moving forward. That is what matters, because they didn't plan it, but when it came, they saw this is an opportunity also for us to have some mileage on this issue. They went into a very robust lockdown. Everything did very okay. Wuhan was under lockdown, then virus suppressed. Now they seem as if they are doing okay,
German.
and but it's not yet over. It's not yet. You see, the problem with this virus, what most people fail to understand about this virus is that this virus is here for a long, long, long time. Unless we get a vaccine or something else happens that we have no control over, this virus is here. So when you look at these issues, like currently people are like chastising Tanzania. They're talking about what Tanzania is doing is wrong. What I think the best any other country, like we look at, you look even at Sweden, what they're trying to do, because everybody is trying to use some guesswork. Nobody knows what is doing. Everybody's trying to use some guesswork to implement this, because there's only one alternative. If you go lockdown way, you have to ensure that before you open your country, you either have a vaccine or you have a cure for this thing. If you don't have this, if you don't have these two, there's only one option.
Okay.
You reopen your country, then the virus, if it was suppressed, it will take its course. So the same
Okay.
thing will be replicated across. So I think it is a tricky balance. It's a tricky balance. Everybody's trying to everybody's trying to implement what they think is possible in their countries, and some are going the herd immunity way, like Sweden. They're going that way. It's very risky, but they say okay, it will work.
Okay.
Others are going, I don't know which way. Then they say okay. So everybody's trying, but what people are doing currently is they're trying just to the fear about this virus, not even about the mortality. The fear is that we don't know much about it. That is just the fear.
Good.
Because
All right.
if we had known a lot about it, then we could have tried to put measures that could contain. But because we don't know much about it, there's a lot of fear. But what if? What will happen? What? So let us close then look at these issues. Once you have sorted them out, then probably we can reopen with an informed mind.
Okay. Thank you for that perspective. So, Wekesa, I want your perspective to go to in terms of leadership in this whole crisis, especially now. It looks like Trump, after the virus maybe reached America and Europe, that's when he felt like he needs to get the blame to China. But again, when we look at other countries which are having maybe women leaders like Germany, where Eric is, when you look maybe Switzerland and other countries, you realize there is a very good leadership, and also in terms of managing these cases, they are even having very low mortality. What does this say about the leaderships in the world?
Yeah, the way we are handling this disease depends with what is at stake. For Trump, there is so much at stake. First of all, he's handling a pandemic at just a season when he's about to he's campaigning actually for his second term. And a part of Trump's argument, if you don't double click it, most of it is for political consumption. And he's trying so much to harvest more political capital in this thing. When you go to his page, you will find every day he's tweeting. And most of the time, he will be tweeting petty things like, this governor has called me, I've given him these ventilators, this governor, and he's talking about the Democrats versus the Republicans. So for uh, uh, it brings like he's not a guy who is focused on the whole pandemic, but he's looking at it. How do I harvest the political capital out of this? I remember last time his campaign strategy was that he talked about Russia. And right now he's focusing, he's trying to distance himself from China so that the nation can perceive him, can perceive like the Democrats are the ones who are befriending the China, and then he as a Republican is standing to defend America the way he has always done to make America great again. And so even this issue of who he has not handled it with a lot of austerity, because he's looking at how he can get some political capital in terms of distancing himself from who, and then it may look like if he retrieves the contributions of America to who, it looks like he's fighting for the rights of Americans. In fact, the part of the argument that has come out is like, why are we giving all much of our money to World Health Organization? Just go to help the poor countries out there, when Americans are still struggling with their healthcare and they still need this money. So he wants the voters to perceive him as more of American people than he forgets that America set itself as the world prefect, and that is what its role is, and it must play in that league. When you look at it from the perspective of Germany, Germany is composed. In fact, for me, I said I like what Germany is doing. First, when you look at it from the statistical point of view, we have been told that there's no way at any point recoveries, new cases went beyond the recoveries. So that means Germany has been strategic in completely containing this disease. Now, after they have managed it, that's when they are going back to Wuhan, and they are telling President Xi that they are billing it. They are putting the bill of Germany to China. And you look at it also in Africa, I can see there are quite a number of leaders like Ghana. I saw Ghana, they are using drones to move from one place to another to enhance screening of the testing of people and accelerating the tests among the citizens. And in Africa, actually, Ghana has been one of the frontliners, and in fact, they have already part of the market they have reopened after they have done the massive screening. So leadership is very key in terms of combating this disease. You look at it from Kenya, we have a few governors who stand out. Up to now, the governors you can't see. You don't even know where they are. But there are few of them who stands out, like Joho, like Alfred Mutua, like Ngilu. There's something tangible you can see, like Givuta Kibwana. You can see and relate to the progress that is happening. And these are the people, even after we have combated this disease, you will see that there's a leap in terms of their medical development. It will not be at the same level, because part of the investments they have done is not for a day. It will go a long way in terms of helping the wananchi. When we come to Tanzania, before I plug up, Tanzania, we are still having the leadership. People have tapped the Kinjekitile type of leadership, where when they were fighting in the Majimaji rebellion, they talked of there was water for healing. We love God, but approach to matters of faith should not be approached blindly. You must be very concise in what you are doing. I've been one of the critics of such, and I say that if you have never, because faith is progressive, by the way, if you've never healed malaria, why are you just, why do you want to tempt God by starting with COVID-19? And so it has come, they delayed the response. And right now, even today alone, they had 84 cases, which was it's the highest number that has been tested in Africa. And because of leadership, one that does not listen. If you look at it from Tanzania perspective, it's a one-man show. Although Uganda has a one-man show, but I think Museveni looks reasonable.
Okay, good. So, Eric, maybe you can weigh in on the same, and then in terms of women leadership and how they are handling this whole crisis, and then Alphonse will handle, and then we'll go to our last parting shots.
Okay, thank you so much, Patrick. And I would just like to comment on what Wekesa said. We also have to realize that politicians are products of politics, and they want to gain mileage with everything that they do. So partly we can't really blame Trump because they're in the electioneering period. And because of this situation, he also wants to gain some kind of footage and mileage on this. And so his tweets are somehow understandable so that he can be able to convince the local man that how much is working to ensure that he's in charge of the situation. Okay, if you look at a country like Tanzania, Magufuli is really just there to prove a point. He's just chest thumping. His actions are not backed up with science or any evidence that has worked before. Of course, any other country, all their actions are somehow backed up with scientific evidence. That in public health, if you look at infectious disease, actions such as quarantine, isolation, curfew, things like this have worked before. And in a way, you are trying to regulate the person-to-person transmission. So what Magufuli is doing is basically unethical, and if Tanzanians are wise enough, they can even take action against him. Because, for example, if people were in church yesterday, and let's say one person was sick in church, can you imagine what this one person can do to the rest of the congregation? And because Magufuli has not banned this kind of gathering or this kind of congregation, the sick people will intermingle with the healthy people, and then everybody else will be sick. Okay, so I think what Magufuli is doing, if Tanzanians can go out and test all the cases, they can be the worst hit country in East Africa. Yeah, in terms of women leadership, I really, I really don't want to promote the agenda of the feminists that women are better leaders than men. But also looking at what has happened. Germany, Angela Merkel is a scientist, and he has a lot of strong background in science. And at some point, I saw something today like she was also involved in the lab, also trying to do some tests, which I think was just for political for political mileage or something, for propaganda. But I think women, when it comes to matters of life, they're usually very emotional, and they will love to listen to experts as much as they can. And they usually tend to rely, especially if you don't have the expertise on the matters at hand, they will usually love to consult and rely on the experts who are advising them. And once the experts give the best ways forward, the women will always comply as much as they can. So this is what makes the difference. Yeah, when you look at Sweden, no, when you look at Finland, you look at Germany, you look at Switzerland, the countries with women leaders, they have been so consistent in what they're doing. Like Germany, they said from day one, schools are, when they detected that the cases were increasing, schools were closed. And Angela Merkel said, and all schools will remain closed, all shops will remain closed. And she has been very consistent because her actions were also backed up with science, and she was a scientist by herself. And also considering the emotional aspect of women, they become, when it comes to matters of life, they are also very consistent so that they don't harm life. So I think this is what makes the difference.
Great. That's a very good perspective. Alphonse, you can weigh in.
I think Wakesa and Eric has done a good job in the topic. But ideally, the body is no body without the head. And leadership is considered the head in such a process. So where a country like Tanzania, and I must be honest, there's nothing I want to hide. Tanzania has failed Tanzanians in terms of leadership. Magufuli has failed them. I just talked about the apology just a few days ago, about the apology that was being run on Citizen TV in Kenya when they talked about Magufuli, ukaidi wa Magufuli. Yeah. Now, and I also said I was not becoming a prophet. I've never been one, and I'm not becoming one. But that was very clear that there are things that cause and effect. So when you see something, you can easily tell with A and B, then only C can be the result. Especially where there are no alternatives. Like in this case, if you mingle with one person, like in Korea, who was potentially infecting or affecting almost 5,000 people, you see, it was managed by a lockdown. It was managed by restrictions of movement and contact. Now, it's not like this issue of going to church or going to worship. Some people are less than others. I think I am personally a man of faith. I'm a Christian. I'm born again. And that leads the rest of my life. Yet, I went to school and I did sciences only. So, and I live and I have logic. Each part of life has its role. So you cannot solve an economic problem physically, and you cannot solve a biological problem economically. So if it is economic, it needs an economic solution. So in this case, it is something that was basic, that the disease has a biological aspect, and the spread has social aspect. So as the biological aspect is being managed in hospitals and labs, then we expect the social aspect to be managed in the society, and that is social distancing. So leadership is either making or breaking in any country, and in this matter, African countries, a good number of them have failed simply because of a leadership issue. And even as we are talking of vaccination in Africa and testing like that one, which was a bit heartbreaking, that some scientists wanted some type of test to be done in Africa, whether true or false. Already, the DRC was offering to do that. Again, whether true or false, but you can imagine the direction we are taking. Why will somebody choose Africa if that was true? Yeah, because its leadership is weak, systems are weak, legislation are weak, and legislation comes from leadership. So I think Wakesa and Eric has done some good service on the topic. I don't want to go much into it, but
Sure.
everything rises and falls on leadership.
Good. Maybe Conrad, you will give your final perspective on this whole topic for today.
Okay. What I have about this issue is there's so much. You see, when you see every other country, what they're trying to do regarding this issue, nobody knows what they're doing. All of them, they're relying on some sort of models which have been made so that, which they are using as their yardstick in preventive side and in containing the issues. So no country has this thing figured out. All of them, they are trying one or two things. There are things that are unknown. The reason why I'm saying like this issue we have currently is being fueled more or less by the things that are unknown. One of the things that we don't know about is the immunity. That is a big question people are asking themselves. They don't know about if you have this disease, if you develop immunity. So there's a lot going on the other side. Another issue we don't know is that how many of us have this virus or have already been infected with this virus. That's why countries are rushing against time to come up with antibody testing, so that they know when they come, they can tell, like if they do a test, they say, oh, you guys had this virus. And they say, I didn't even show any symptoms. I didn't have anything like that. So we need to know how many of us have this virus in our population, because as things I've said, like here in Kenya, I've seen people say we have how many cases? We have 270 something right now?
281.
281.
281. I'm not sure. Yeah,
281.
we have 281 cases. But you see, but you see, these cases depend. How you detect these cases depend on which sample are you collecting people, which people are you testing. Kenya, for example, we are testing, like the majority of the people we are testing, there are people who have come from abroad. Let us not lie to each other. You have tested people who have come from abroad because they have been tested twice, thrice, and our total test, we are talking about 10K. I was just doing the simple mathematics, just do simple mathematics. From that 10, I think right now it's 12 or something K.
13.
You should know that 13,000. Right now it's 13,000. You should know how these tests are carried out. Number one, once you have that disease, you'll be tested. They confirm if you have or you don't have. That is the first one. Then, for those people who have recovered, you should know that they have been tested twice. We should know also the people in quarantine. Some of them we have seen videos walking around, they have been tested twice. So the total figure we are talking about of people who have been tested, actual people who have been tested, if you do your math.
All right. Conrad?
Is actually in the region, probably 6,000, 7,000, around that region, but not that 13,000. But another thing, we should also look at which kind of people are we testing. We are testing people from abroad, and a few people we are from contact tracing. Contact tracing is very good. That is the point we should be going there. But we have another big problem. Now people are being arrested and taken to quarantine for flouting regulations. these same people are the ones who are going to be tested. These people, most of them, they don't have that virus. When they are tested, the test will come out negative. So we are wasting our resources testing the wrong people. Then we come here and say we have 10, 15 or so cases when we are testing, because that's why I say, like, you can't compare these things, because one country can be testing, they have another testing protocol. They are testing, this is their testing protocol. They are going to the people who have the high probability of testing positive. They test them. As you're having a different testing protocol, because
Okay.
what you should know about this disease is, like, if you look around the number of community infection, there are so many cases that have been detected out of Kenya that are attributed to Kenya. We have 3 cases from Uganda, which were detected in Uganda, but these people are coming from Kenya. Earlier we had a case from Rwanda. 2 people, I am not sure about their earlier, but I'm not sure if they were in transit, but they passed through JKI. I'm not sure if they were in transit or something like that. I'm not sure about that, but they passed through Kenya. Then when you look at this issue holistically, we have a lot. So we should not, these figures, they are not giving anybody any hope
Okay.
unless we start that mass testing, which is targeted, which they are trying to do right now. That one I applaud them, because they are going to the people who are at risk of having this disease. When they go to the medical officers, when they go to those people working in hotels, that is the place we'll start now seeing those figures probably rising or doing like that. On issue of Tanzania, I'm not so. I'm saying, like, of course they came out late, but everybody's following another different template, because it has been hypothesized so many times that whatever we are doing right now, the best way a country can manage this situation is just do one simple thing: protect the people who are vulnerable, the aged, the people with chronic diseases. Try to ensure they stay at home. Let the rest of the people continue working. That's what is happening in Kenya. The government has asked people who are above 55 to go and work from home, taken leave, people with pre-existing condition. Then the rest of people, like Nairobi, people are walking around, they are still mingling. What is happening is that they continue spreading this virus across, but because probably the population, mostly in our town or something like that, they are mostly young people. Probably we are not seeing, we have so many cases, but we are not seeing much we are not seeing an increase in number of hospitalization. That's why even we are looking at, I think it was Alphonse who alluded to this video of a young man from I think from where, Homa Bay, the Homa Bay person who was trying to say, I don't have, but he can be he tested positive probably, then he's an asymptomatic carrier. He doesn't just know, you can't tell. But I think one of the things that is failing us is miscommunication, because when I listen to this CS, every time he says, we are treating 281 people, what are you treating? You're not treating anybody. In other countries, these people can stay at home. They can isolate from home with no medical intervention and they'll be fine. You should just tell people some people will have milder symptoms, they won't need much, so that people understand this disease. When you talk about treating people, yet you're not treating people, will say, like, if I don't have, like so many people will go online right now say, like, if I don't, you mean they are not treating him? They are not. Nobody's being treated. They're just managing the symptoms if they come around. If you have a fever, you're picking panel or something like that, but nothing much. In fact, if you are disciplined enough, we had social economics could allow, probably most of us could have self-isolate from home, and we'll just be fine, so that we don't crowd our hospital, we don't crowd our facility, we don't expose our health workers to more risk of infection. So on this issue, every country is doing whatever they think is necessary, and probably 1 year from now, 2 years from now, when all this will be settled, let us come and look at the mortality rate, then compare. You see, right now there's a lot of things moving around. When we compare, probably we'll see what mortality is attributed to this COVID, or if there's any difference between Kenya, between Uganda, and probably there'll be no difference. There'll be no much difference. It's just a few points or something like that.
Okay.
That's my take.
So thank you very much, Conrad. That's a good parting shot. Wekesa, your parting shot, and then we go to Eric, and then Alphonse, and then we end this session.
Okay, may I say that I don't. Okay, we have talked about too much theories, conspiracy theories. But for me, the way to look at it is in terms of argument. You know, some theories are self-defeating. The more you click on them, the more you realize they are not going anywhere. They are there for public consumption, just as we have many bloggers who will create your attention, just as we have many headlines in Kenya. Some of them you don't even open to the next page because you know, apart from the screaming headline, there's nothing of substance inside there. And so, for me, part of this theory, we should not we should not consume them so much. They are there for us, just for, sometimes I say they are there for mental or intellectual tickling. They tickle our minds, and we get we get awake. Yeah. But we'll also talk about a few cases that are happening in Kenya, like yesterday. Was it yesterday or today? Umoja, there was a wedding party. That was not right. The police had to arrest those people who are doing the party. So Kenyans are still taking this thing for granted. They are assuming a lot, but the moment the moment of truth has come. Right now, the cases are all over. We saw the CS listing villages and estates, Kiturai listing Ruaka and everywhere. So it's no longer a rich man's disease as we talk, because I haven't seen so much of Kilelesho and Arunda and Karen, as much as we say it was a rich man's disease. I'm hearing so much of the local villages, because the truth is, even if this disease came through a rich man, most of the time, in terms of rich interaction, rich people don't interact so much like poor people. For us, when it comes to an estate, as we mingle so much. You will mingle with Mama Mboka, mingle with queuing or to fetch water. You will queue at the posho mill, and you will be standing in the matatu. So it's poor people who are more endangered in this story than the rich people, whether it will be emanated from there. But in the final analysis, if it enters in the villages, it will be more devastating. So we should not even buy any idea that this is a rich man's disease or what. Anybody can contract it, and anybody can be a casualty.
Sure. Good. Eric, your last parting.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Patrick. And I would just like to commend you for always organizing this, because like I said before, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there. But people who are informed, like most of us here who are in this conversation, we can stand to demystify some of these myths and some of this disinformation. So it is a point whereby some of our population are not well informed, and when they hear something that is maybe threatening a little bit, everyone goes crazy, and then they get so much scared. No, I think it's very important that we adhere to the government regulations. The government is trying to adopt and adapt the WHO guidelines as much as they can. So it's very important that I think the government, not I think, but I'm sure the government is taking into consideration the local context, because WHO usually gives the global guidelines. So every country has to take it into its own context. So government is very sure, I'm very sure government is taking our local context into perspective. So let's also stand, especially if you know that some rumor is being peddled around there. Yeah, like I saw many people are on the neck of the cabinet secretary when he allegedly lied about this Homa Bay issue. Yeah, so it's very important that when people know the truth about something, let's come out and really tell the public what as it is, as opposed to just being emotionally being carried away, so that to show people that somebody is working somewhere or something like this. So it's very important that people get truthful information, because the truthful information will help people to make sound judgment. So this is my take for this evening.
Thank you very much, Eric. Alphonse?
First, thank you for having us on the platform today. This is a disease, it's not witchcraft. So don't go to a witch doctor. Go to hospital if you must go somewhere. If not, remain at home. I ensure that you minimize physical interactions with people. Keep distance. If you must have some interaction, keep the social distance as recommended. Yes, it was spread faster by air travelers. That's why the countries and continents that got it first are the ones that have, travel mostly using air transport and maybe have good train or rail transport as well. And since Africa only constitutes of 2% of global air travel, that might be a possible reason why it accounted for the slow and the low numbers as of now. Now, once the numbers start here, usually if nothing is done on time, the curve will go up very fast because the disease is highly infectious. So therefore, I request everybody, those listening and watching, and those who will watch us even after this session, please take care and take it serious. Thank you so much for your contribution to the session. I have learned a lot. I've heard from each one of you. Yeah, and I believe that we will overcome. So what we need to do with the information we are getting is let's verify information, particularly the scary information. Let's verify information, because some of this information might be misleading and we might just fall trap of false information. So let's try our best to either get from authentic sources, if we know the authentic sources, or see how best we can verify. But try your best to verify information before you can consume it fully and confidently. This is specifically to our viewers and those who are listening to us in this platform. So thank you so much. I believe we'll overcome. Anything else, I think we'll be discussing in the days to come. But remember, when the disease knocks at your door, even if you are to lose one person in your family, you'll discover that you have lost a person out of the disease. So don't wait for it to come to your door. Since you have heard about it, just keep off. Do your best. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. That's a very good partition. Thank you, everyone. Good night, everyone. Eric, good night, and I hope you keep safe in Germany and our colleagues in Kenya. So see you, everyone. All right, bye-bye, everyone. Good night.
Bye.